Hello, everyone out there. My name is Andrew Parshad. I am the president and founder of Quality Smart Solutions, Quality Import Solutions, and Cannabis License Experts. Our companies offer a variety of solutions for consumer packaged goods, pharmaceutical, and cannabis sectors. So if you have questions, please do reach out to us. Happy to help you. You can connect with me here on LinkedIn, or you can visit our websites, and you can also follow our 3 company pages here on LinkedIn. Just want to put out a disclaimer as well that this session is just going to be informative, and it doesn't constitute any sort of a client-consultant relationship. And if you do, again, would like to consult with us, you can visit our websites, fill out the form, and one of our team members will connect with you. So let's get into it. CBD, very, very hot area for several years now in Canada, and not just in Canada, but also in the United States. The burgeoning question that we've gotten over the years is, when will this become a natural health product? When can I, how can I sell CBD? And those types of questions. And so I can tell you that, first of all, CBD can be sold in Canada, but it only is through the cannabis pathway, through the Cannabis Act. And so what that entails is, obtaining a processing license, number one, and that gives you the ability to manufacture CBD products, same with THC, but for the purposes of this discussion and this webinar, CBD, to be manufactured in Canada, you require a cannabis processing license. And the 2 pathways that you can sell CBD are medically, and that would require a medical sales with or without possession license. That's again under the Cannabis Act. Or the other pathway is selling recreationally, and that would be into provincially licensed retailers. So those are pathways that you can sell cannabis or CBD. CBD currently is treated the same as THC under the Cannabis Act. So that's kind of where we're at with CBD right now. The scientific committee was given time to review the data, the evidence when it comes to CBD. And a few years ago, Health Canada had proposed a consumer health products pathway, and basically for CBD. And so they then basically handed that to the scientific committee. So that report came out in late July. They reported that's publicly available. And so that report was quite extensive, very well done, well detailed, both for human and for animal safety and efficacy. So, to start on the human side of things, and this is just going to be a quick overview of that. You can go online and review the entire report. Health Canada has published that report. So just quickly going through this, on the human side, their conclusion was that CBD is safe for use with a range of between 20 to 200 milligrams per day. And the data supported up to 30 days use. So that's number one. And that's really where it's really actually aligns with what was found in Australia, where in Australia it is sold as a dietary supplement over there, as a natural health product under the TGA. And so 200 milligrams is available in Australia, and so 200 milligrams lines up with what Health Canada has determined. what the scientific committee has determined. Secondly, in terms of efficacy, really what they determined was that there's three claims that can be made. Number one, relieving minor symptoms of stress and nervousness. Secondly, to promote sleep. And thirdly, to relieve minor pain. Now, with regards to the sleep claim, that's where the most evidence was found. And the suggested dosage was 150 milligrams to 200 milligrams. So 150 to 200 milligrams per day, but they have suggested that more data is needed. So that's kind of a summary of the human data. So again, to recap, 20 to 200 milligrams per day, 30 days duration with three claims, reducing or helping relieve minor symptoms of stress and nervousness, promoting sleep, and relieving minor pain. Now, there was also evidence to support animal safety and efficacy. So for animals, it's safe for dogs, and that is at a dosage of 0.2 to 2 milligrams per kilogram, and with an oral dose of twice daily. So that's where the safety range is. In terms of efficacy, really the evidence was around osteoarthritis, and there is benefit for dogs with osteoarthritis to take CBD. Now, the committee determined that there just not enough information, enough data to necessarily come to conclusion that osteoarthritis is clearly there. There is a benefit, but the dosage amount, the duration, the daily amount has not been concluded yet. So more data will be coming, over time here. Now that's basically the summary on the animal side of the data. Now, Health Canada has put this out for public consultation. So they're looking for further information, whether it's evidence, whether it's marketing, whatever's out there when it relates to CBD, they want to see it, they want to get it. They've given a date, it's 70 days since the publication from the safety committee. And so we're looking at early October, I believe it's October the 6th. If you have data, you have information, make sure you submit it to Health Canada. The big question is, what can I do? When's this, how is this going to all transpire? And, my opinion at this point is really just an opinion, and it's just my thoughts and just from my experience in the natural health products space. So the next stage after consultation will be that, Health Canada will gather that information, that data from what they found, what they got from the scientific committee. And then it will go towards developing, regulations. So there'll be proposed regulations that will come out. I'm going to hazard a guess here and say that it will happen. It will be published into Gazette 1 as proposed regulations sometime in the mid to later half of 2023. And then thereafter, I would say before the fiscal year end of Health Canada, which would be March 31st, 2024, we will see the final CBD regulations, the natural health product regulations with CBD and the amendments that have to happen to both the Cannabis Act as well as the natural health product regulations so that CBD can be positioned as a natural health product. I think all of those things that have to happen will happen by, I'd say the latest spring of 2024. So before March 31st. Now, there's also been discussions about a cost recovery program in the natural health product space. Currently, anybody can file any NPN at no cost in terms of no Health Canada costs. And so there's been more chatter in the last few years about cost recovery. It would not surprise me that the cost recovery program gets implemented before the CBD amendments into the natural health product regulations happens. So, sometime late next year, I would not be surprised if we see a cost recovery program. What that looks like is anyone's guess again. If you look in Australia, those costs are approximately $1,500 per license, and then there's an annual fee. I don't know if there will be an annual fee here in Canada. I suspect there won't be initially, at least. But on the drug side, there is a similar program where there is a fee to apply for a DIN, and then there is an annual drug listing fee essentially. So that's kind of what I envision happening. Now, I believe what Health Canada, because there will be a huge influx of applications that will come in under the natural health product regulations for CBD products. I believe there will be a monograph published. That monograph will be very restrictive. I believe it will only allow for a CBD only ingredient in the product, so you won't be able to combine CBD with other natural health product ingredients. That monograph will outline the dosage range, similar to what the Scientific Advisory Committee had summarized, and I suspect if it is going to be a CBD monograph that'll be published, that would fall under what's called a Class 1 natural health product. So Class 1, I'll give you a quick overview of the natural health product regulations and the pathway to obtain a natural product number. So any natural health product that has any sort of structure, function, therapeutic, or preventative claim does require a natural product number. It is an 8-digit identifier. And there are basically 3 classes of natural health products. Class 1 are those where the product is following one NHP monograph, and these monographs are published. They're publicly available. You can go online, and there's well over 300 monographs available. And those monographs, some of them are single ingredients, some of them are multiple ingredients listed, some of them are based on certain conditions or certain self-care requirements. So, again, getting back to CBD, I believe it will be a monograph. It'll be a Class 1. So Class 1 natural health products are, they take approximately 60 days to obtain. Class 2, you're referencing more than one monograph. So, for example, you have an ashwagandha you have a product with ashwagandha and vitamin D. That's referencing 2 different monographs. That the timelines, the performance standards for Health Canada currently are 90 days. And I should say those are performance standards, but historically they haven't been hitting the targets, necessarily. And it's really with COVID, there was some impact there with resources offline and whatnot. And of course, prior to COVID too, there's just, the influx of applications coming in relative to the resources available. That's been a challenge. Hopefully Health Canada will be prepared when CBD goes that pathway, because if they aren't, we're going to see a significant, extension to that turnaround time. So again, Class 1, 60 days, Class 2, 90 days, and then Class 3 are those where at least one ingredient in the product does not follow a monograph, or that there is no monograph at all for it, or the ingredient falls outside the parameters of that monograph. So it may be the daily dosage limits, there may be claims, risk statements, part of the plant or extract, or maybe it's synthetic and the monograph states that it has to be naturally occurring. There's various reasons why it could fall under a Class 3. And so those Class 3s take 210 days. So, getting back to CBD, if it's going to be 60 days, and say the regulations come out, say January, early January 2024, and folks start to put in applications, we could be seeing natural health products, CBD natural health products, on store shelves by, the spring or summer. So again, that's based just on my opinion, if that's how it all lines up. So that's the whole, product licensing pathway. That's the natural health product current regulations. For pets, there is a veterinary health product pathway, and that's governed also by Health Canada. It used to be governed. It was basically Health Canada did not have a structure set up, so they outsourced it. But a few years ago, they brought it back in house, and so a veterinary health product requires a notification number, an NN, and the ingredients have to be listed in the permitted substances list. And you can go to market with a health product. So likely what will happen, and this is another set of regulations outside the NHPR, is the veterinary regulations, and those will have to be amended as well to allow for CBD as a veterinary health product. So that's the product kind of summary of what we could see: NHP, VHP for CBD. Now, the other part of it is making CBD products. So currently, as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, that CBD is only through a processing license. What we'll probably see happen is CBD as an NHP, that it can be produced in a site licensed facility. So a site license is the natural health products pathway for various activities that can be conducted, including manufacturing, packaging, labeling, and importing. So basically, someone who wants to make a CBD product will require a site license. I suspect what will happen is just as what happens with drug manufacturers who want to make natural health products, is that cannabis licensed processors will they currently can obtain a site license as well, and they make sure they are following GMP and making sure there's no risk of contamination, and they have all the processes in place. Because they are following GPP, which is essentially like GMP, Health Canada will probably grant those processors a license relatively quickly when after Gazette 2. So now that's not to say that a processor can't apply for one now. I mean that there are plenty of opportunities for a cannabis business to diversify their business and consider leveraging other Health Canada regulations, such as the natural health product regulations, the drug regulations, even medical device regulations, and that pathway. The only thing that's not allowed with cannabis, obviously, is foods. Any sort of food products are not allowed. So, site license is a pathway that can absolutely be taken advantage of. And this is where I think for CPG brands, I mean, those who are manufacturing in Canada, they have a site license. They're ready to go. They're just waiting for CBD to go through Gazette 2, and they'll be off and away running. So those processors should consider, that whole site license pathway, perhaps considering starting that process sooner than later. And the reason being is that, obtaining a site license takes, right now, it's taking about 3 to 4 months for Health Canada. I can tell you during COVID, it was taking well over a year. There are still some that are lingering under that COVID timeline where there was a lot of disruption, just resource disruption in particular, that are still stuck in that, and it's taking them 8, 9, 10 months. So it's improved. At least what we've seen with our clients is that the timelines are improving, and we're seeing that about 3-4 months. But I wouldn't bet on that necessarily being the case later on or tomorrow, or even when CBD goes Gazette 2. If that happens, there are going to be I suspect a ton of processors that are going to jump in, try to get a license, and suddenly there'll be this whole bottleneck that'll happen again with Health Canada. And what could take right now 3-4 months may take longer, at that time. So something to think about. Now, the other thing to keep in mind too is when you have like when you have a site license, you're expected to be operational with it. So conducting activities, you just can't get a site license, sit on it, and then hope that when CBD comes along that you can start doing it. Think about this like CBD potentially is a year and a half out. So you got to have a plan where you're manufacturing something else besides CBD, some other natural health product. Your license has to be renewed. Initially, when you get a site license, it has to be renewed every year for the first few years. Then it goes into every 2 years and eventually every 3 and 5 years. So you don't want to be just dormant on your license. You got to renew it, submit all this data to Health Canada that you don't have for your natural, because you haven't been making natural health products. And then Health Canada says, sorry, we're taking your license away. You refused. Go apply all over again. So it's really about planning this all out. You really do need to think about, if you're going to get into the obtaining a site license to make products, you got to be, just planning it out and doing that. If you are particularly if you're a cannabis business. Now, the other big question that comes up a lot too is, and that's that third license, the importing site license, is will a U.S. company who has a CBD product, and we know in the United States, CBD is technically it's not a dietary supplement. It is definitely not a food. The FDA has really taken this approach of kind of sitting back, and they're only targeting companies that are making drug claims or are putting CBD into foods. Because it's essentially not grass at this point. So they're basically letting CBD companies, I shouldn't say letting, they are not taking a proactive enforcement approach when it comes to CBD as a dietary supplement. So you see a lot of products that are sold in the United States with a dietary supplement facts panel, and maybe making light structure function claims around joint health or sleep health or whatnot. So essentially, what would happen is, if CBD is a natural health product, those companies would be able to obtain a natural health product number, an NPN, just as any other product, vitamin D, a melatonin product coming from the United States. CBD would be treated the same in Canada. So they get that NPN, they can export it to Canada, and the company that would be, bringing it into Canada would need to have an import license. So that license, that's that fourth license that you can obtain. Again, it's a license that takes 3 to 6 months to get, and it has to be renewed every year for the first few years, and then it goes into a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year cycle. So so that whole pathway is there. And I'm sure there are going to be many U.S. companies that are going to jump on this, as soon as the regs get passed. So there's going to be a ton of CBD products in the market in Canada. On the CPG, on the consumer side, where you'll be seeing them on retail, on Amazon, on other e-tailers. So that's essentially what's going to come here. And just like anytime there's a hot product, there's going to be a huge takeoff of products. There's going to be saturation, and then there's going to be brands that are not going to survive and close shop. Now, the part that's going to obviously impact the cannabis businesses are, with CBD essentially being pulled out of their hands. This is going to impact dispensaries, provincially licensed cannabis retailers. That's going to be a reality essentially. And then processors, if they don't consider this other site license pathway, depending on their business, it could have a small impact if most of their business is THC, or if they have most of their business is CBD, they got to really rethink their whole business plan, and they have a year and a half here to kind of figure it out. So that's kind of an overview of things that are going to come here with CBD as a natural health product. It's going to be an exciting time. You know, in terms of those health claims, you know, if you want a kind of a hint of what those health claims will look like, go to the Natural Health Product Monograph database. Take a look at some other ingredients or products out there that have similar health claims. So, for example, look at melatonin or 5-HTP and look at the verbiage of those claims. Health Canada likes to reuse, recycle claims. They've done that with 5-HTP, melatonin, for example, or even ashwagandha, which has claims around stress. Look at the cognitive monograph that Health Canada has published to get ideas about those stress-related claims. When it comes to pain claims, take a look at the MSM or chondroitin natural health product monographs. I wouldn't be surprised if Health Canada really takes bits and pieces of that and basically puts together this CBD monograph. And then there'll be obviously duration of use restrictions about, seek advice from a healthcare practitioner. Either it'll be that way if you're going to take it more than 30 days, or it may simply say do not take CBD, more than 30 days duration. There will be a number of risk statements. Again, you can visit the scientific committee summary of exactly what they've outlined, and there are a number of them. So these risk statements will have to go on your natural health product, eventually when on your NHP with that number, with that NPN number. So, and I should make it very clear, any CBD product that is currently sold in a store that is not a cannabis licensed store, that is a provincially licensed dispensary, is illegal. I'm sure we've all seen it in health food stores where there is a CBD product sold there, or you see them in, I was at a few trade shows. I won't mention any names, but these are like consumer shows. They aren't truly like business trade shows. And there was CBD sold openly for dogs and for humans, completely illegal. With that being said, enforcement has been kind of weak here in Canada. I think that part of it is the dollars that are available for that enforcement, and the enforcement's really on the higher risk side of things. So, those that are growing illegally cannabis, basically the gray market, that's where the focus has been. So, but at this point, it is still illegal. You cannot sell CBD. If you want to sell CBD right now, like I outlined, you really have to go the cannabis route. If you have an idea for a CBD product, you don't need a processing license. You can partner with a white labeler cannabis processor, and if things work out with them, if they see an opportunity or you see an opportunity with them, and if there's an opportunity for the buyer at the provincial side to take in your product, then there's a number of things you have to consider here. That is really what you need to consider. But yeah, if you're thinking about like products, again, MSM, chondroitin sulfate, for pain management, ashwagandha for mental stress, rhodiola is a really popular one. Mushroom products, that has really taken off. There's been the shroom boom, as they call it here, especially during COVID, and we've seen some cannabis companies actually, and of course a number of psychedelics companies also kind of diversify their business, where they're in the cannabis and or psychedelics business, and they're also now launching these natural health products in the mushroom space. So now, again, as I mentioned earlier, you're probably not going to see that combination that'll be allowed, like a mushroom with CBD or MSM with CBD. at least not initially. This is really about collecting data, collecting information, and that's, it's about the safety for Canadians. And just as we just went through this supplemented foods program with Health Canada, that was many years in the making, and Health Canada was gathering data over the years. The same will happen with CBD. They will keep it restricted initially. As they gather data that is conclusive, they will then expand it and amend and revise that monograph, and potentially allow for class 3 type class 3 type CBD products where you're making other claims that are not fitting the monograph. I don't think that'll be allowed initially, but at some point it will be. So, and again, disclaimer, this is all, me theorizing it. It's not come to light. We're still a ways away. We're waiting until October 6th. The comments go to Health Canada, and then we're going to move along from there. So, so that's really kind of an overview of CBD as a natural health product, looking at the product licensing side of things, the site licensing, so actually the activities of manufacturing, packaging, labeling, or importing, and what that could really look like and the opportunities. So, so yeah, that's really everything that I wanted to cover on this topic. I'll open it up for questions now, and basically see what's out there. So here's one of the questions here. If this Health Canada committee has found scientific evidence of 3 claims, the stress, sleep, pain, this means producers can now use these claims on labels with no repercussions since Health Canada said evidence exists. That is not true. So keep in mind, like producers right now, LPs, this is a scientific committee that has come to this conclusion for CBD as a natural health product. CBD right now under the Cannabis Act does not allow for any of those claims. There is a medical pathway and there is a recreational pathway, but you are not allowed to make those claims. If you want to make those claims, you have to go through basically essentially a drug submission, which is obviously very expensive, very tedious, and really, why would you go through a drug submission for CBD when clearly a pathway of natural health product, a natural health product, CBD is on the forefront here. So, yeah, the short answer is no. Those producers can't make claims. Don't take that committee summary as being regulations, right? It's one thing being a committee summary. It's another thing being regulations. So hopefully that answered your question. Looking again, any other questions here? Okay, what type of import permit must a Canadian company importing an NHP from licensed U.S. companies have? HC import, NHP, or another? So the type of license that's required that a Canadian company needs to have is a site license, which is an importing site license. So that license, again, takes a number of months. What has to happen with that license is the manufacturer, where that product is produced, has to be annexed to that import license. So a minimum of one manufacturer has to be on that license. You can't just apply for an import license without any kind of association of a manufacturer and a warehouse. So first piece, that manufacturer, they have to show evidence of GMP, and so a report is submitted. There are different types of evidence that can be submitted about that manufacturer, everything from an NSF certificate, or a regulatory, a government agency audit that was conducted, for example, an FDA inspection report, unredacted, showing all the deficiencies and then what the corrective actions were taken, and among other types of evidence. But that has to be submitted along with your site license. There is a warehouse where the product has to land into. That primary warehouse also has to be annexed to that import site license. that warehouse can be a warehouse in Canada. It can be a warehouse anywhere else in the world. So basically, and again, like I mentioned earlier, licensing, takes about 3 to 6 months. Could take longer. Like I mentioned earlier in the session, we've seen it all over the place. We hold a site license too. We went through renewal, and it was probably the toughest renewal we've ever gone through, and it took us about a year. And normally it took about 4 months to go through renewal. So yeah, that's basically what summarizes what's required for importing natural health products. You do need a what's called a site license to import NHPs. Another question. Looking through here. Okay, yeah, so I see Brian, I have a question from Brian. Why is HC moving CBD into NHPs? Great question. I think it's, essentially there's been a lot of push from that. I think part of it has probably been other regulatory agencies, considering Australia has a very similar regulatory framework as Canada. Even our other areas, whether it's healthcare, whether it's our tax systems, very, very similar. We're almost like a twin sister of Australia. So, Australia took the advanced move here, and they've now positioned this as essentially as a as a supplement in that country, sold in pharmacies. And that's one thing I forgot to mention earlier, was that these will only be sold in pharmacies initially. So apologize for that clarification. I know a lot of folks are, thinking, hey, I can sell this in my health food store and whatnot. The proposal has been pharmacies. That's probably where Health Canada is going to take it. Only is in pharmacies. But that's not to say that if you're a brand that you can't sell it in pharmacies. There's a lot of brands, natural health product brands, that are selling it in pharmacies only. So there is that pathway that initially will happen, and then as time goes on, it will go into other pathways. So that may mean that some of these health food stores may reconsider their business model. Maybe. There are some stores that have homeopathic HM DINs, but they aren't technically really a pharmacy under they aren't members of the pharmacy association of the respective provinces. What I see will also happen is each province will make their own decision of how the CBD product will be positioned, whether it be over the counter or whether it'll be behind the counter. If Health Canada actually gives the opportunity for provinces to make the decision where they want to sell it within their pharmacies. So getting back to your point there, though, I believe there's enough evidence to support that CBD is safe. It's not quite. It doesn't have the same, neural kind of biochemical pathway or physiological effects as THC does. And so that's, I think, part of the reason. And I think there's been just a lot of public pressure, to add to that for Health Canada to really look at this, to really move it that way. And then, Australia is one pathway where it's clearly regulated. United States, not so much. FDA. And then there's other jurisdictions in Europe and whatnot that are in the UK that are in particular the UK is really moving in that direction, to really support this as a natural health product. So it's it can be derived from hemp. So yeah, that's really. I did the best I could to answer your question, but hopefully I added some element of why Health Canada is moving in that direction as an NHP. Another question: does CBN fall under the same regulations as CBD? So that CBN is another cannabinoid. They haven't addressed it in the like the scientific committee didn't clearly address that. I suspect that it is not going to be under this initial round, at least in terms of CBD as a natural health product. I think they'll just keep it as CBD. There are so many other cannabinoids that could fall under CBN, CBG, you name it. It's being researched. I think that the challenge is that some of these other cannabinoids, the evidence is not strong enough when it comes to safety in particular. And so I think there needs to be more data on safety for these other cannabinoids before Health Canada allows, an amendment to CBD to allow for these other cannabinoids. So I think that's the best that Health Canada can go with right now. It's always about safety, and so it's really just CBD that we're going to see in this initial leg of the regulation. So, question from Dennis: do we see LPs making a major push into this space? It's a great question. I mean, we all know what's going on in the cannabis space. It is a tough market, and I mean, businesses can still do well, but they really have to be smart. They have to be lean, and I think that goes so far. And I think they really have to diversify their business. And like I mentioned earlier, they really should be considering leveraging Health Canada's other regulatory pathways. Diversify your business, right? Go on the natural health products pathway. That is I'd say an easier pathway to take compared to maybe a drug or a medical device pathway. Cannabis is one ingredient. There are thousands and thousands of other health ingredients out there, and that is really where their opportunity could be. Is look at that way, and considering how many store opportunities there are, right? And I don't know what the current count is for cannabis retailers across Canada, but I can tell you there are tens of thousands of business store opportunities, retail opportunities on the NHP side of things. There are 7,500 convenience stores, thousands of pharmacies, grocery chain stores, your food, drug, mass stores like your Costco's and your Walmarts out there. There are a lot of spaces that those LPs, if they had a site license and they manufactured, they could go down the pathway. Now, here's something that kind of came up. I was following a Twitter kind of conversation with a lawyer talking about a cannabis company, quite a large cannabis company that has a majority stake in a CPG company, and that CPG company is obviously promoting their products as any CPG company should, falling under natural health product or food regulations. And of course, they have colorful packaging. And so one of the things that kind of came up was the brand element piece, right? So, based on the Cannabis Act, really a cannabis company that is not supposed to, well, I mean, this is really, as the lawyer had mentioned, the academic question is, can a cannabis company market a non-cannabis brand that they have majority ownership on and allow them to market it as they do as a non-cannabis brand? So this is, so far Health Canada, it's been 4 years now, and there have been multiple companies besides this big company. There are other smaller, medium-sized companies that are, launching natural health product companies that are doing this and marketing it under the natural health product regulations. There's been no issues. There's been no enforcement. And so I suspect that Health Canada is either taking a wait and see approach because, if the CBD pathway goes where it likely will go, that probably will mean not just the rescheduling of CBD, but also the amending of certain marketing components of the Cannabis Act. So there are a lot of pieces to be considered. And so, a pathway that these LPs could consider on the short term is a white label opportunity, right? They could be a white label manufacturer. I can tell you there are, the manufacturers currently in Canada who hold a site license for natural health products, their lead times are very long. Natural health products is a hot area still. It got hotter during COVID. That momentum is still there. And the lead times are running, we're hearing anywhere from 8 to 25 weeks. I mean, half a year before you could produce a natural health product in Canada, at least. United States, there are more options, but then you have to consider those other layers of working with an importer, the cost to ship, those logistical pieces. So yeah, that's really an opportunity, I think, for licensed producers to get into the space. I'm using this platform partly to get that message out to LPs, and that talk to us about it. We'd be happy to educate you about what this looks like, but diversify your business. Don't take the route of, put your hands up in the air and that's the end, because my business isn't flourishing. We're going through a kind of a reset here in cannabis. We're still getting folks that are approaching us for licensing. They're smarter, they're leaner. They're taking they're taking the micro license approach, which is totally the way to go, and then expand your footprint from there. And and the same is happening in the U.S. too. Like in some of these newer states that we're working, that Cannabis License Experts is working on. These younger states are taking the approach of, let's start smaller. Let's have a smaller footprint and then expand from there. Because bigger footprint is bigger cost to maintain, and you just increase your risk of potential failure faster. So yeah, I think these LPs should definitely think about it, and I think a major push will start to happen. I think those rumblings will really pick up once we get into Gazette 1. And usually there's a gap between Gazette 1 and Gazette 2. It's, it can vary from, a few weeks to maybe a month or two, but it'll be close, right? And at that point, it may be almost too late. I would say it really would be too late, because now if they start scrambling to get that site license and everyone else is thinking the same thing, and there's that, Health Canada resource bottleneck piece, that's going to be problematic. So really think about this. You have a year and a half to think about this. Start planning now, really. So hopefully I answered that question there, Dennis, for you. Any other questions? So I see a question here. When you say in pharmacy, is that an on shelf or behind the counter? So James, that question that you had, that's going to be really up to the pharmacy, I believe, or it may be regulated by Health Canada. I personally think it's going to be the pharmacy associations. Each province has a pharmacy association. They're going to decide that. I remember a number of years ago, iron supplements, which have safety caps on them. They were there were concerns about those types of products, and so what they ended up doing was that several provinces took a proactive approach, and they required that those pharmacies in those provinces carry those iron supplements in some provinces based on a certain level of dosage, or the total amount of iron that was in the bottle. They asked that those be behind the counter. So I think that's ultimately what's going to happen. It's going to be really the pharmacy that will decide on that, where it'll be placed. All right. Yeah, so there's another question about what forms do you see CBD taking on in stores? Tablets, powders, stick packs, capsules, all of the above? That's a great question. I think some of the history that we have now on the cannabis side of things, where we see, predominantly tinctures, soft gel capsules. I believe that there are some powder-based products as well. I think it's actually going to be all of the above. I think Health Canada won't put really any restrictions, as the only restrictions really be around that dosage amount. Now, with that being said, I mean, really, I was in Bermuda not so long ago, and I saw most of the products there were like 95% of the products were capsules, soft gel products. So I suspect that category is probably going to win the race initially. But yeah, I really see everything under it unless Health Canada puts a restriction. Now, with that being said, under the Natural Health Product regulations, you can't have food-like formats. So, for example, you can't have like a chocolate bar or a beverage. At least currently, anything that's over 95 milliliters falls under the food category. And so those then have to be positioned as a beverage food product. Yeah, I mean, you see those energy shots, anything under 95 milliliters, those are considered natural health products. So, so it'll be interesting to see if there'll be like a CBD shot that comes out. Again, I think it'll just be CBD allowed in there. No, like combinations of other ingredients. But yeah, I think all of the above, like you mentioned, will come out. Tinctures are also, I think, really popular. Drops under the tongue, goes into your bloodstream really quickly. So I think that'll be popular as well, especially if you're thinking about the sleep pathway. You're doing that, maybe a half an hour before you go to bed, under your tongue, into your bloodstream quickly, and off and away, going to bed. So, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see all the different formats that actually come out of this. So, other questions. So I see one here. U.S. import distributes to dispensary with no claims. So currently, under the Cannabis Act, the cannabis regulations, any company, whether it's United States or worldwide, can only ship cannabis to Canada, where the Canadian business, which is a cannabis license holder, they have to have an import permit, and that import permit is per shipment essentially, and it's typically and it's only allowed for scientific research purposes. It is not for resale. So again, you cannot ship a CBD product for sale into Canada, and so it is only for research purposes. It's very restricted, and that's the way to go into Canada. Going into the United States, that's again very restricted. You really technically cannot ship CBD, definitely not cannabis, into the United States. Cannabis is not, like THC cannabis is not federally legal. There are a number of states that have legalized cannabis, and intercommerce trade is not legal because that is federally regulated as well. So getting cannabis and CBD is really under the Farm Bill, it's very difficult to get that into the United States. So short answer is no, you can't import it. And really, why would you need to? There are a lot of choices. There are a lot of hemp growers in the United States that are pumping out CBD. That's really the pathway to go currently. So hopefully that answered your question. Yeah, there's a question here from Michael. With regards to Health Canada allowing potential import of NHP products containing CBD, giving international trade. So, good question. I mean, if Health Canada goes down this pathway of CBD with a site license, they allow companies to get a site license as they do any other NHP. And I think that the challenge for Health Canada is going to be how to set up two sets of rules for NHPs. Having a CBD as an NHP should really fall under that that category, right? And the only other way that I see them doing this is creating a completely, like a different category called like the CHP category, right? And that way they put all these rules similar to what's happened under the supplemented foods category, right? Supplemented foods were not traditional, conventional foods. They weren't natural health products. So this middle ground supplemented foods category came out. There was a temporary market authorization license that came out. They collected data. That was 10 years before we finally came out of the TML program into just a supplemented foods regs on its own. Gazette 2, that was passed just last month. So if they do take that pathway, you know, I think that pathway as a CHP is going to take longer than 18 months. I think there's just more of a framework and a policy to create under a CHP. I think it'll create a lot of confusion to the general public. Licensing, I think the licensing will also be, it'll take longer than a natural health product. I know just going, our team going through this with clients for TMLs, licensing was all over the place. The timelines, they were 6 months to 12 months, and they kept extending it. Before it was supposed to be a 5-year program. Then they said they needed more data, and it just kept going on and on. And I just, personally, I don't like that pathway. I think the easier pathway is use what we have existing, which is the NHP pathway, which is easy for Canada then to just import NHPs, CBD as an NHP. So it is a great question. It'll be interesting to see how Health Canada, comes up with this this final rule. If it'll favor more domestic businesses to launch CBD versus importing, but I see that being very confusing, cumbersome to go any other way than the NHP route. So question. Yeah, so a question about distributor. How do you think distribution will be managed through a drug distributor or a natural health food distributor? Good question. I think if it falls under the NHP, I think it'll fall exactly the same way. It would be. If you look at if you honestly look at the distributor broker landscape right now, most of them are really positioned for not just pharmacies. They are really positioned for health food stores, food drug mass, so independent chains as well as food drug mass. So sorry about that. I just had a disconnect here. I think those brokers should start. Those other brokers should start thinking about those other chains where pharmacies are at. But I think those brokers that are in the pharmacy space right now, where CBD will likely go, are the ones that'll have the leg up in this, at least initially, right? So, I think that's essentially where that pathway will go. So we only have a couple of minutes here left. So another question here. So CBD studies covered 30 days intakes. How's the situation so far concerning stability studies, shipping studies? That's a good question, and I'm sure a lot of these, maybe not a lot, but some of these current cannabis processors, brands, probably have conducted some of that. So there may be some intel that they have, but and there may be some companies in the United States that have launched CBD products as well, that have maybe conducted those stability studies where it's a requirement by certain retailers to show that. Yeah, I mean, CBD, if that 30-day limitation comes in, that is something that those brands have to really think about in terms of consumers taking that. I can tell you from my experience, from what consumers do, is they often do off-label decisions, right? And that's their own decision. That is obviously not in compliance with what the product follows, but consumers take things into their own hands, and it'll be interesting to see what they'll decide on their own. But if it's the 30-day intake, yeah, I mean, stability studies will be essentially required. It's required as a manufacturer or an importer to show proof of that stability data. So that will have to be there one way or another. So hopefully I answered that. So yeah, I think that was really it. So we covered a lot. Again, if you have other questions, do reach out to us. Join us. Follow us on various platforms. We're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter as well, and yeah, or reach out to myself. And we look forward to having another one of these sessions in the near future. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. Have a great rest of your day.